It's time to act, because Obamacare is a direct attack on the middle class.
Bill is a wolf in sheep's clothing.
The battle over health care, what is in that Senate bill and what's not, and how does it affect you? We will ask two medical experts.
We don't leave people with disabilities behind to die, so I'd rather go to jail than die.
Opponents raise their voices and put their bodies on the line protesting the GOP bill. What changes do they want?
You are the laboratories of democracy. You believe because we're the longest lasting democracy in history that we're just a spent force now?
Plus, former President Bill Clinton in South Florida this weekend calling on the country's mayors to take action on climate change. Good morning. Glad you could join us. Glenna is off today. Our focus this morning is your health and getting good health insurance to keep you healthy. A new insurance bill in the Senate will come up for a vote later this week. It is supposed to improve on a House version, but some say it doesn't, including at least 5 Republican senators. It is a red-hot topic in Washington and here in South Florida, where nearly 500,000 people are enrolled in Obamacare. The GOP bill unveiled late this week keeps some popular parts of the Affordable Care Act. It lets kids stay on their parents' insurance plan until the age of 26. People with pre-existing conditions will still be able to get coverage, and the Senate bill drops the individual mandate that requires everyone to have insurance or pay a fine. But it gets stickier when it comes to Medicaid. The government program that provides medical care to the very poor, the elderly, children, and most people in nursing homes. We're talking about 4 million Floridians and 75 million people across the United States, but their benefits would start shrinking in 3 years under the Senate bill. That is the big hang-up. So let's talk about it with our guest. Dr. Geeta Nayar is a physician and Chief Healthcare Innovation Officer for FemWell Group Health. That is one of the largest management services organizations in the state of Florida. Dr. Nayar is a rheumatologist by training. Dr. Arthur Palomara is the past president of the Broward County Medical Association. He is still on their board of directors. Dr. Palomara is a vascular surgeon from Hollywood. He is also the Florida delegate, or a Florida delegate, to the American Medical Association. Doctors, good morning. Great to have you come in. Glad you are here. Let's first start, if we can, Dr. Palomara, start with the AMA, because in the past, virtually every establishment, medical group, the nurses, the doctors, hospitals have opposed the bills that have been in Congress, the House version. What about the Senate version?
We don't know yet. Excuse me. The reality comes down to it that the American Medical Association Board of Trustees is probably meeting at this very moment to define their position. The reality is that the House of Delegates just met last week, and we came out with some principles that certainly oppose the House version of the bill. We voted at that particular meeting to make sure that Medicaid benefits are not lost, to make sure that people continue to have access. That has long been the American Medical Association's position.
Right.
We also came out with the idea of a public option, some sort of a competition. But I cannot sit here and give you the official position of the AMA because that is being determined as we speak.
Oh, okay. So, Dr. Nayar, I mean, you are both a physician, you have an MBA, you deal with technology, you see medicine from a kind of a wide perspective. What is your view of this Senate bill?
You know, it's very complicated, Michael. I think that Dr. Palermo mentioned to you that even the medical community is divided on this. The biggest issue that we as physicians feel is important is access and high quality medicine at an affordable cost.
Right.
I think the system is broken. We all know that. We're still waiting for the CBO, and it's not really clear that the Senate proposal is that much better.
Right. Well, the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, is going to release its projections, we believe, on Monday, and that is dealing with cost and how many people would be thrown off or lose their health insurance. According to the CBO, the House version, 23 million Americans would lose their coverage over 10 years. That's a big number.
It's a very big number, and particularly in the state of Florida, as you mentioned, we have about 4 million children that are on Medicaid. So this is a big issue for us, both here locally and across the country.
Right. Well, Dr. Palomara, I mean, that is the hang-up, isn't it?
The hang-up is really access. If they lose their insurance. People cannot come in to see doctors. And let's not forget, too, that primary care doctors and pediatricians are very poorly compensated for the work. Medicaid pays extremely poorly, and consequently, it's going to be an additional barrier for these doctors to take care of those patients. And just one more thought, if I might add, too. And also, because the Medicaid patients in the state of Florida belong to HMOs, it's an additional hurdle for a specialist to get authorization for these patients to receive their care.
All right. Well, Medicaid is a joint federal and state program. According to the Senate bill, starting in 2021, the states would get block grants in decreasing amounts. And then the question is, what does Florida do?
Well, Florida has not done so well in this regard. As you know, we did not take the federal money for the Medicaid program. As a result, we have all the people now in HMOs. And the fact is that if there's a reduction in that fee and those reimbursements, and the state does not decide to take care of these people adequately, then it's going to put the responsibility on the local municipalities, because there is a law called EMTALA, which requires us to take care of those people regardless of their ability to pay.
If they show up at a hospital emergency room. So if they go to Memorial, one of the Memorial facilities, they go to Jackson in Miami or other hospitals, they really must be treated.
Absolutely. And as Dr. Palermo mentioned, we are going to see an increase in uncompensated care. So as physicians, we are going to take care of any patient that comes through the ER.
Right.
But the question becomes, who is going to foot the bill?
Well, that is the question. Dr. Nayar, let me ask you about, I think, really a big sticking point here is people with pre-existing conditions, and we're all, well, you're still a younger woman. I know I have some pre-existing conditions. If you drop the individual mandate that says people must have health insurance, and that meant that younger, healthier people got in, and the money that they paid helped subsidize older people who need more medical attention. If you drop the individual mandate, how do you still get people with pre-existing conditions and cover their costs?
You know, Michael, the big issue that we're not talking about in this proposal, and even in Obamacare, is that we need to be focusing on chronic diseases. That is the main cost in the system today. And with that comes the importance of prevention. So when you are young and healthy, it's important to understand what medications you should be, aware of, what preventative screenings you need to be aware of, what kind of diet and lifestyle. These all have long-term implications that we're just not talking about in the proposal today.
Well, we need better education. I mean, that's for sure.
Can I take a crack at that?
Yeah.
The solution, at least the solution that's on the table right now, is something called a high-risk pool, which have not worked in the state of Florida before.
We've tried that in the past.
And it does not work, and it's going to become prohibitively expensive, particularly for the people that can't afford it, elders, and for children.
All right, so you have somebody who, say, has had a heart surgery,
That's right.
and they go out of being covered, and I think it's now under this provision, it's something like if you're not covered by 30 days, 60 days, you have to sort of start anew. I mean, the premium for somebody like that would just be
astronomic
and
unaffordable. And this bill, as it's proposed right now, is going to be disadvantageous both for the people in the 60 or older age group and for poor people. And it's going to be completely unaffordable. Again, it's going to put the onus on the local municipalities, the local hospitals to provide that care, and for the doctors. And how that whole system is going to work has not really been defined, but it's going to leave our healthcare system in chaos.
Yeah. Well, I think it's fair to say to both of you doctors that Governor Rick Scott, who headed the Hospital Corporation of America, believes in for-profit hospitals, and he doesn't really believe in safety net hospitals. And so if we keep going in that direction, it means that the people who show up at the ER at Jackson, Jackson's ability to pay its physicians, pay for the care it provides, is going to be much more difficult.
You know, we need to be focusing on how we can have doctors focus on the doctoring and patients actually have a relationship with their doc. We've spent so much time getting in between the doctor-patient relationship, which we know affects outcomes. So whether it's the technologies that we're investing in now that actually interfere in that, and the fact that so many physicians are having to spend more time on the bureaucracy and the paperwork, that they don't have time to talk to the 60-year-old female who has diabetes, hypertension, and CHF. about her medications and her lifestyle, we need to be talking about that, as well as the cost of medications. That is one of the biggest drivers in the system
Right,
today.
that hardly has been talked about, is Part D of Medicare.
No, the
and
other
other private and people who have private insurance paying for their medication.
So to get back to one more point, that we have kind of lost our primary care doctors in this community. There are not enough of them. They're overworked. They're undercompensated. And if you really want to build a healthcare system like you're talking about, they certainly have to be supported. If you really want to lower the cost of healthcare, they need to be supported because they would do everything that you've just said right now. But we don't have them, and there's no really any money in the horizon that's going to be able to pay for them.
Yeah, Dr. Palomar, if I may, Gita was just talking about the technology end of this. I don't know, in your office, I don't know what percentage of your staff deals with insurance claims and forms, but I mean, that has to have increased exponentially.
No question about that. In fact, it's just part and parcel of the same thing. We have one person right now that's doing authorizations and booking. We're going to have to hire another person just to take care of that aspect of it. And this is an office of 4 doctors, by the way. So, I mean, the amount of cost, the entropy in the system has just become overwhelming and overburdensome. We can't afford it.
All right, well, doctors, hold your thoughts for a minute. We have much more to talk about the Senate bill and on health care, so stay with us. We'll be back in just a minute.
Lori Jennings, taking you to the heart of the story.
Reporting from just outside Port-au-Prince, Haiti.
Traveling to wherever breaking news happens.
Good evening from Johannesburg, South Africa.
Covering stories that matter to you.
Your donations are making it to Port-au-Prince.
Around the world.
History of the Vatican behind.
Coast to coast.
You're back to live pictures. We're taking you to Seattle.
And right here in our community.
I'm Lori Jennings with our live team coverage.
Professionalism, integrity. Turn to Local 10's Lori Jennings on the one and only Local 10 News.
Did you know that erectile dysfunction is a common disorder of middle-aged men? It can profoundly affect their quality of life. Because too many men are suffering, I sought out exclusive, proven technology with the highest success rate in the world. At Timeless Age Medical, we offer the most successful, painless, and exclusive evidence-based treatment for ED. Our TAM high-intensity focused shockwave treatment and the P-Shot. This unique combination treatment removes built-up plaque, opens up blood supply, resulting in increased blood flow, tissue growth, and best of all, restoring sexual function. The treatment is painless and takes less than 15 minutes. End your frustration now. Call us for your free consultation.
End your frustration now. Call Timeless Age Medical today. 954-455-8400. 954-455-8400. The ultimate solution to ED. Call Timeless Age Medical today.
If you look beyond what's there, you can dream of what might be. Royal Caribbean Cruises began as a dream, started in a small trailer on Biscayne Boulevard. Today in South Florida, over 3,000 people work for Royal Caribbean, and we're investing in creating even more jobs here in Miami. Together we've explored the world, but we always return home to where the dream began. Royal Caribbean.
My name is Benjamin Guzman, served 8 years, proudly. My ultimate goal is to help my brothers and sisters in arms with the transition. I feel like I should help veterans is because I need help.
You're Ben?
Yes, sir.
You've done so much for your fellow veterans. We want to do something for you. You can take your pick.
I am so humbled by this. Ford will surprise you.
On the Sunday morning, live in our studio, 2 physicians, healthcare experts, Dr. Gita Nair, who is from the Femwell Medical Group. Do I have that right?
You do.
Okay, good. And Dr. Arthur Palomara. Dr. Palomara, one of the criticisms of the House version of the bill that passed in March was that it substantially increased, it would have increased, the healthcare insurance premiums for people 50 to 64 before people get on Medicare. The Senate version gives them more subsidies, so that is, it appears, an improvement.
That is a very modest improvement. When I was 60 years old and had to pay for my own insurance, it cost me $1,600 a month with no health care history and taking no medication with a $5,000 deductible. The reality is the premiums premiums are just unaffordable, and it's really going to negatively impact the seniors' ability to obtain care. And I think that that's going to have to be reworked.
Yeah. Well, you know, politicians of both parties and the president continue to talk about let's have affordable health care. But, you know, whatever plan is adopted, or maybe it won't be, the fact is that for a lot of people, the premium is high and the deductibles are high, and getting quality, affordable health care is just a huge challenge in this country.
You know, it remains a challenge, Michael, right? Well, one of the biggest problems in healthcare today is people don't know what they're buying, right? So when we talk about value, you want to have a good quality product at a decreased cost, just like in the retail industry. So in healthcare, we have a literacy issue. We have a time issue. Physicians have about 8 minutes to see the average patient who has 3 comorbidities, may not have the right educational level to sort of understand the complexities of healthcare.
Right.
When I talk to a diabetic patient about their hemoglobin A1C and I have to explain that the sugars glycosylate their RBCs and their blood cells, I mean, that was like 30 seconds, right? And you're a little bit higher level patient than I'm used to, Michael. So we have to be talking about getting patients and doctors together to be able to talk, and we have to start innovating in the healthcare system, investing in telemedicine technologies, remote patient monitoring, taking the conversation to the home, where the patients are in a less expensive setting like an ER or an urgent care.
Yeah. Well, that raises a good question, and that is, I recently had a knee replacement surgery, but I didn't go out and say, well, I'm shopping for the best, least expensive MRI, or I'm looking for an orthopedic surgeon who will cost less. I mean, people, we just don't do that.
Well, the reality comes down to it, too, that a patient is not a consumer. Particularly if you are sick and you come in with abdominal pain or chest pain or something, you're not going to get treated. Absolutely, because it's a matter of life and death. Actually, with the knees, you probably did have the luxury of looking around. And yes, you could apply some sort of a cost paradigm on an MRI. You probably could find a cheaper place to do it with the same value. But there again, too, we are forgetting about the value of the individual surgeon. And in all honesty, some people get better results than other people. And I think that the consumer does have the obligation to do that.
Well, let me just say in my defense, yes, I went to a surgeon who has great outcomes, and happily I got one too.
And that is changing, though. I will say that there is a consumerism happening in healthcare that is for the positive, because we do need to start having savvier consumers that are investing in prevention and actually making educated choices at a younger stage in life than being forced into an emergent situation.
But there's another aspect to that, too. Many of the consumers are not that well educated, particularly if they're elderly, particularly if they're older, let's say 70 or 80 years of age. They don't have that luxury of having the knowledge to be able to shop around and do that. Younger, yes, they will go on the computer and they'll take a look at it and find out what services are available. But in the older age group, and particularly people that come from different cultures, that have language barriers, they lack that opportunity.
If we can, I just have to go back to the Medicaid issue, because 4.1 million Floridians, the elderly, poor, the disabled, children, pregnant women, are covered. And even though doctors are not well compensated, these people get care.
They do.
And by Florida, as you pointed out correctly, did not expand Medicaid about 3 years ago. Right. But these people still are being covered. It takes $27 billion of the state budget to do it. And that figure's not going to go down.
There's no other opportunities. Unless it's changed within the past year, you cannot buy a private health care insurance with maternity benefits. That's just not available. As a result, more than half the babies born in the state of Florida are born under the Medicaid program.
Right.
Number two, over half the people in nursing homes are actually taken care of by Medicaid. You take away that coverage, what's going to happen? You're going to have complete chaos in the industry.
Yeah.
Well, not to mention the lifetime caps, right? So again, we have vulnerable populations that are not only having issues getting access to care, but are also limiting whatever care they might be getting. It's an issue, and it's something we need to be talking about, and I think we're all waiting for the CBO to weigh in as well.
Well, and we can't wait to see it. In the meantime, one other element of the Senate version, House version is similar on this too, is that it gives a huge tax cut to the wealthy.
It does.
People who earn more than $250,000 a year are going to pay, they get a tax cut of 3.8% on their annual investment income. Mm-hmm. And then people who also make a lot of money pay 0.09% of an ordinary income tax. And that's going to go away. That would go away immediately.
So the fundamental question is health care a right or a privilege?
There you go. That's the question.
And the other big elephant in the room, or the gorilla in the room, is the fact that high cost of health care, the health cost of insurance, the high cost of hospitals, and the high cost of pharmaceuticals. How come we are not looking to try to lower some of those costs?
Well, we heard President Trump say on the campaign trail, indeed Hillary Clinton did too, we're going to renegotiate with Big Pharma on the cost of pharmaceuticals, but in fact, I don't know that that's happened.
Well, a part of the problem today is that we had so many stakeholders that were not at the table, right? So again, I'm not a policymaker, Michael. I'm a doc. Dr. Palermo is a doc. We went to medical school to take care of patients, right? And the fundamentals of this proposal are not perfect. And I think that we need to be looking at the cost drivers, which you just mentioned, are there's not the pharmaceuticals, the chronic diseases, the investment on prevention that is lacking, and leaving our most vulnerable population at risk is very dangerous for all of us.
Well, that is why we are going to be on tenterhooks until we see what the CBO says, perhaps as soon as Monday. Dr. Palomero, great to see you again. Been a while since you've been on.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Nair, thank you for coming in. We really appreciate it. Up next, we're going to take it all to the round table.
At Timeless Age Medical, we offer the most successful, painless, and exclusive evidence-based treatment for ED. Our TAM high-intensity focused shockwave treatment and the P-Shot. This unique combination treatment removes built-up plaque, opens up blood supply, resulting in increased blood flow, tissue growth, and best of all, restoring sexual function.
The ultimate solution to ED. Call Timeless Age Medical today, 954-455-8400.
We just got the keys to our new house. Got the keys.
This is exciting. We've got our own house. Yay!
I'm sorry.
You like it here, Maddie?
I love you.
I love you too.
No matter where your taste takes you this summer, there's only one place that keeps up with the many flavors of you. It's your summer, your way at Speedway. Get any size Speedy Freeze, fountain drink, or tea for just 79 cents.
We're on the way, the convenience stores of Speedway.
When you excel here, you have the obligation to excel here. Progress is performance when it counts. The 2017 Audi Q7, named a 2017 IIHS Top Safety Pick. Get an exceptional offer at your local Audi dealer.
Pamper your feet with this at-home pedicure.
I don't have time for that. My feet get so dry and cracked, I need serious relief. That's why I use O'Keeffe's for Healthy Feet. Guaranteed relief for extremely dry, cracked feet. Thanks to O'Keeffe's, I got my feet back.
GCU is the university that never sleeps, moving at the speed of light. And now, GCU is leading in the area of computer science and IT. Join the most inventive concept in education today. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Visit gcu.edu/IT.
It is time now to take a closer, more analytical look at the week's top news stories with our Powerhouse Roundtable. Love this. And we've got a good one for you today. Ed Pizzoli, president of the Tripp Scott Law Firm in Fort Lauderdale, and he is an active voice in Republican Party politics locally and in Washington. Nancy Ankrum is the editor of the editorial page of the Miami Herald. We are glad to welcome her back always to the Roundtable. Also back with us today, Mark Caputo, the Florida correspondent for Politico and the author of the Daily Political Florida Playbook, which for us is must reading. Thank you all for coming back. Great to see you. All right, so Nancy, let me begin with you. The bill that the Senate is proposing is supposed to be a big improvement on the House bill. Is it an improvement?
Well, for millions of people, I think 23 million people across the country, it really might not be. And the unfortunate thing is that after 6 or 7 years of railing and railing and railing against Obamacare, this is a rushed, rather secretive process that is going to really change the lives of a lot of people, and not necessarily for the better.
Ed Pizzoli, that is a criticism, although I think that ordinary citizens may not be as bothered as people like us journalists are, but there was no committee hearings, there was no public markup. Suddenly on Thursday, Mitch McConnell comes out. He had met with 12 other senators, all white men, God bless them, we love them, but he came out and he said, all right, here it is, and sort of let's begin the conversation.
But you have to start somewhere. So the three things the bill that they propose does do is, one, it provides greater freedom. So by taking away the mandate portion of the current bill, current Obamacare. Two is it pushes down government, that governs best, governs least. So it takes away taxes. So it takes away the taxes that were imposed by Obamacare. It pulls back on those. And third, it pushes, it lives up to the promise that the government that better serves is closest to the people. So what it does is it pushes some of this responsibility for the states to figure out what best serves their citizens. Yeah. Those three pieces are all incorporated in this bill. Good start. I don't think we're finished yet.
Well, hardly. I think the discussion is really just beginning. Mark, the points that Ed made, yes, it gets rid of the taxes that supported Obamacare, the subsidies, but at the same time, it gives wealthy people just a huge tax break.
Yeah, one of the untold stories about Obamacare is it was in one respect, regarding the health insurance premium support, it really transferred a lot of wealth away from very wealthy people and kind of indirectly into the pockets or into the lives of poorer people, albeit the insurance companies are the ones who certainly got the money right off the top because it subsidized health insurance. Now that's going away and you're just seeing basically a reversal of it. What I'm curious about is we've heard since 2010, I was talking earlier that I had written a story back then looking at the polling and how everything indicated that if Obamacare passed, it would be a net benefit to Democrats. Goodies would flow to people, everyone would be happier, they'd have health insurance, etc. People who'd be funding the stuff are ultra wealthy who wouldn't miss much money. But ever since this bill has passed, it's just been just devastating politically for Democrats. Now the question we're going to have is, will the repeal be devastating for Republicans? And I just don't know yet.
I just don't know, and I actually don't think so, because the Democrats have been so ham-handed about their advantages over the years, even, I mean, through the Obama years, who actually did not really help the Democrats to the extent that you would expect a president to do. And the Democrats have just fumbled a lot of their advantages, a lot of their assets.
But the promise of Obamacare never was fulfilled. So the promise of being able to keep your doctor and keep your plan and do all those things were total lies. And so some of that the Democrats own. They own that. So let's go through that. But here's the other side. The Supreme Court ruled when it said Obamacare was constitutional that it was a tax. And frankly, that's all it was. It was a tax. It did not address the basic concerns of providing health care to those who need it most.
But it did provide, it's undeniable that if you believe that you should provide health insurance coverage to everyone, there's really now only two ways to do it, we've seen. You either do universal payer.
Single payer,
universal health care, pardon me. Or you do Obamacare. That's it. And the reality is that Obamacare, when it passed, it did insure more people. Florida's uninsurance rate, it used to be one of the highest in the nation, started to reduce for the first time because of Obamacare. There was nothing like it before. Now the question is did it really improve people's lives, and are people going to miss that? I don't know.
But that's basically due to mandates. What you're seeing now, though, as Obamacare
that's the only way you can make it work.
As you've settled in, 270,000 people in Florida have now come off Obamacare's rolls because of premiums and lack of access to true health care. So those are the issues. I mean, so as you actually, the impact of Obamacare as to what it promised, it didn't promise that at all.
Ed, let's go to a point you made initially, and that is the individual mandate is gone in the Senate and House versions, so that younger people aren't required to buy health insurance and don't have to pay a fine. But then the question really, and Dr. Palomara addressed it, what happens to people with pre-existing conditions, because this pool arrangement where they get some kind of subsidy, it hasn't worked in the past, and it doesn't look like it'll work in the future.
But I would suggest to you that neither bill touches that. So pre-existing conditions are still protected on the House bill and the Senate bill. Also, you have greater now authority under the Senate bill for local states or states to do more localized dealing with what their states are. Florida is different than, say, Illinois or some other place.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but the state of Florida's record on providing health insurance access is atrocious. Everything the Republican-led legislature has done has failed. The only thing that ever worked was Obamacare, and now they're getting rid of it.
And this was ground zero
Now,
for
while
Obamacare.
pre-existing conditions might be covered and protected, that's true, but when you remove the healthy people from the insurance pool, it's going to cause the plans to have to raise the remaining premiums on the remaining people. And so, yeah, you're going to have a right, if you have a pre-existing condition, to have coverage, but you're now going to have the right to pay way more.
But you're already paying way more because of the ultimate system of Obamacare failed. And so when the government, we have nationalized medicine in the Veterans Administration. I want you to ask a veteran what they think of that.
Well, probably not much would be.
That's right, exactly.
My dad loves his VA benefits, just so you know.
What you're going to see is people reverting to having to get the most expensive care, which is in the emergency room, which should not be the source of primary care or preventive care.
Yeah. Well, I think we all need to see what the CBO says, and the CBO score is going to be out maybe as soon as tomorrow, which projects the cost and the effects, and the CBO score on the House version said 23 million Americans would lose their health insurance. I've just got a feeling, Ed, that when we see the score tomorrow or Tuesday, it's going to be a lot of people who would lose their health insurance.
But Michael, from a civil libertarian point of view, is it the federal government's role to mandate that you have insurance, or that a 25-year-old has insurance, or somebody else has insurance?
Well, maybe it's not
That's
analogous, but the state of Florida says that when I drive a car, I can't drive a car without insurance.
I understand, but what they said is, though, driving a car is a privilege, right?
Well, is healthcare
a privilege?
That's the question.
A privilege? Well, I guess
I'm not touching that one.
All right, that's a question.
Wait till you get sick.
That's for the politicians to decide, not for
but
us merely.
Access to health care may be absolute, right?
And you're going to have it even if Obamacare is
access to affordable health care is the issue. All right, everybody, hold your thoughts. We'll be back with more of the roundtable in just a minute.
We did cover that.
Celebrate summer at Pollo Tropical with our original family meal. Feed your loved ones with a whole fire-grilled marinated chicken, rice, beans, and rolls for only $12.99. Only for a limited time. Pollo Tropical, chicken on the grill.
The hottest new car technology at hot summer savings now at Volkswagen. The top-rated Jetta, less than Civic and Corolla, just $119 a month or zero down. Passat, roomier than Camry or Accord. Or the Turbo Tiguan SUV, more powerful than CR-V and RAV4. Your choice, $159 a month or zero down. Even the new 2018 Atlas is on sale now with America's best SUV bumper-to-bumper warranty. Better than Honda or Toyota. That's why Volkswagen is the world's largest automaker. Save now during our hot summer sale at Volkswagen.
At AT&T, we believe in access, the opportunity for everyone to explore a digital world full of possibilities, connecting with family, friends, and the things that matter most. And because nothing keeps us more connected than the internet, we've created Access from AT&T. If a member of your household is a SNAP participant, you may qualify for home internet at a discounted rate of $10 a month. No commitment, deposit, or installation fee. Visit att.com/access now to learn more.
Hi, I'm Shannon Briggs, two-time heavyweight champion of the world. And for over 10 years, I've been buying cars from Vera. From sales to service, they treat you just like family. Come down and experience the Vera difference. Let's go, champ! Let's go, champ!
Shannon Briggs said it best. And now Vera Motors is offering up to $10,000 off. That's $10,000 off on select vehicles at Vera Motors. Come in and purchase any vehicle from Vera Motors and get an autographed boxing glove by Shannon Briggs. Come to Vera Motors in Pembroke Pines, 4 miles north of Hard Rock Stadium on 27th Avenue.
It's Ashley Home Store Stars and Stripes event. Get 20% off or get 60 months no interest plus free shipping on sofas, dining sets, queen beds, and this gorgeous outdoor dining set. And for a limited time, get 60 months no interest on mattress sets from Serta iComfort and Tempur-Pedic. It's Ashley Home Store Stars and Stripes event. only at the #1 Tempur-Pedic retailer in North America. Ashley Home Store. This is home.
Celebrate summer at Pollo Tropical with our original family meal. Feed your loved ones with a whole fire-grilled marinated chicken, rice, beans, and rolls for only $12.99. Only for a limited time. Pollo Tropical, chicken on the grill.
Welcome back. We are in the middle of a very lively roundtable with Nancy Ankrum, the Miami Herald, Ed Pizzoli, a lawyer in Fort Lauderdale, Tripp Scott Law Firm, and Mark Caputo. If we can, let's talk about Florida politics and the health care bill. Nancy, we had Bill Nelson this week say that he doesn't like the bill. He's going to vote against the Senate version. Marco Rubio is sort of being a little coy, saying, I'm going to look at it, see its impact on Florida, but he's going to be a yes vote.
Exactly. He should just cut out the middleman and just go, go with what his political heart says to do, which we know it's going to do, which is fine. It's Marco. It's fine.
And Rick Scott's going to Washington tomorrow to advise the president on this. And when Rick Scott sort of makes it comfortable for Marco Rubio, then Marco will say yes.
I think that there'll be information that Marco will consider after long consideration. He'll be supportive.
Yeah, the hanging is over. All that remains is the trial. Okay? He's going to vote yes. The question is, there's like 2 or 3 squishy Republicans. If they lose them, they lose the health care bill.
Right.
And
Well,
one of those
5.
senators is not Marco Rubio.
No. He is not. Well, let's talk about a couple of members of Congress who voted for the House version, Carlos Curbelo and Mario Diaz-Balart. Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, they're all Republicans. She did not vote for it, says she doesn't like the Senate version very much either. What's Curbelo going to do?
He's going to vote yes, and I believe Mario Diaz-Balart's going to vote yes if it comes back to them. In the end, it's probably difficult to describe. It's difficult to write, but when you weigh all of the checks and balances and all of the incentives and disincentives for voting on an Obamacare repeal, if you're a Republican, your incentives by and large, because of your base, because of the way in which people hold these things against you in your base, you've generally got to vote yes. And if you're a Democrat, you've got to vote no. And there's really not much gray area.
It's easy for Republicans to vote against Obamacare, right?
Right.
Because Obamacare is a flawed law that has problems, that has, raised people's premiums, forced them against their will, frankly, under the mandate to buy insurance, and frankly hasn't delivered on its promise. So that's easy. That's an easy yes.
Yeah. Well, also the fact is that Carlos Curbelo, congressman from the 26th Congressional District, Southwest Miami-Dade to Key West, is in a kind of a precarious position. It is a district slightly more Democratic than Republican, and he's got roughly 70,000 Obamacare recipients in his district, but he would be dead with Paul Ryan and the House leadership if he did anything other than vote for the bill.
But the congressman has shown an ability to be independent and to speak on behalf of that district very, very well. Independent from both the party and independent from the president. And so I think he has both the credibility inside the district, and he will vote yes on this ultimately if it comes back. I'm not even sure, Michael, it may not come back. I mean, in a certain sense.
It may not. No, it may not even get to conference. And I would say, on behalf of Carlos Curbelo, I'm not endorsing him, but he has been very shrewd. I mean, he teamed up with Ted Deutsch, liberal Democrat from Boca Raton, on climate change.
Right, exactly.
And he's been very savvy. I think he's
been very savvy, but there's no, it's not a big risk for him. He can talk the talk about protecting his constituents. However, when it boils down to one, his race is off in the future. People are forgetful. People are forgiving. Other topics are going to wipe this off his constituents' plates by the time it's really, really time.
All right. Well, let's talk, if we can, Ed Pizzoli, about the big criticism we have heard from many Democrats, is that this health care bill is a huge wealth transfer, and it's a huge boon to the wealthy people who don't pay, will no longer pay immediately 3.8% on annual investment income, and the payroll tax for the wealthy of 0.9%, that goes away too.
Well, I mean, Mark and I talked about this before. One of those, that tax increase occurred with Obamacare and sat not only on wealthy, but business people. Small business owners felt the impact of Obamacare in what they had to provide and how they had to provide it, and the regulatory structure around Obamacare cost big time money to small and mid-sized businesses throughout Florida. And I think this is a wise move to pull all those mandates off, get rid of the paperwork and the regulatory overhang, and so businesses can make their own decisions. I'll give you an example. My law firm, we had to actually begin reducing our health care benefit to our employees so we didn't get hit with the potential Cadillac tax, which is part of Obamacare.
40% is the Cadillac tax on very expensive health care plans. But Mark, I mean, the downside, and it's a huge downside, is all the people who are on Medicaid who benefited from the subsidies will remain, but at a much lower level, and some people, who knows what's going to happen to them?
Well, I think we have to look at the health care bill in two ways. One is the Obamacare repeal aspect, and that has to do with people in the private individual insurance market. And then there's Medicaid. And when you're looking at these future reductions in Medicaid, now the question is does a reduction of an increase equal a cut? Well, generally it does if you've got enough growth. There is a possibility that if they are reducing Medicaid, there's a great possibility by $800 billion over 10 years. That's a real cut, and there are going to be real consequences for that. We just don't know what they are.
All right. Well, let's move on to another topic if we can right now, and that is Miami-Dade State Attorney Catherine Fernandez-Rundle this week got a really strong rebuke from the Miami-Dade County Executive Committee. They voted, it was a voice vote, Nancy, to criticize her for failing to prosecute 4 corrections officers in the death of Darren Rainey, the prison inmate down at the Dade Correctional Institution. Does that vote by that committee, does that resolution, how important is it?
I think that she needs to maybe read the tea leaves here in terms of her support. If she's not getting the support here, it means she's not getting the money. If she's looking at a statewide race, she's going to have to think long and hard about where her support, and I mean money, is going to come from. I think that she says she didn't get the goods from the medical examiner, and she has a good point there, and that is something that I think needs a deeper dive.
It took nearly 5 years to get the report from Dr.
Absolutely.
Emmylou,
but
the
at the
medical
same
examiner.
time, she could have been much more of a crusading prosecutor, the likes of which we see in New York and the boroughs and whatnot.
Even if I may say, Michael Satz in Broward County has prosecuted a couple of cops and even has been in trial himself, prosecuting an accused cop.
Absolutely could have been a grand jury here. She could have been much more vocal about the travesty of what happened, but she doesn't. Cops and law enforcement.
Hold your thoughts.
She's hallucinating if she thinks she's going to become governor.
Right. I mean, the context. That's the context
she's hallucinating.
of it. All right. Stay with us. We're going to have one more segment of the roundtable. We'll be right back.
For a limited time, you can get a half chicken meal with this farm fresh, never frozen Boston Market rotisserie chicken with 2 sides and freshly baked cornbread for just $8.49. Boston Market, dinner is ready.
Buy now and make no payments.
Nothing till next year.
During our 55th anniversary sale at Rick Case Acura, save even more with up to $10,000 off. Get our guaranteed lowest price or your money back. A new 17 Acura ILX, just $159 a month. New Acura RDX, now $259 a month. Only Rick Case doubles your nationwide factory warranty to 10 years. Plus, with our exclusive benefits, you can save over $4,000 more. This week at Rick Case Acura, 441 at Sunrise Boulevard.
You've always been responsible for them. For guidance.
Great job! Oh my gosh, Dad, is this mine?
For freedom.
Oh, have a happy birthday, sweetie.
For support. For love. You've always been responsible for them. Now, plan ahead and be responsible one last time. The Neptune Society, America's most trusted cremation services.
This at-home pedicure. Time for that. My feet get so dry and cracked, I need serious relief. That's why I use O'Keeffe's for healthy feet. Guaranteed relief for extremely dry, cracked feet. Thanks to O'Keeffe's, I got my feet back.
GCU is the university that never sleeps, moving at the speed of light. And now, GCU is leading in the area of computer science and IT. Join the most inventive concept in education today. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Visit gcu.edu/IT.
The Honda Perfect Accord sales event is your chance to get an incredible deal on the Accord, which has been named to Car and Driver's 10 Best list a record-breaking 31 times. To celebrate, we have amazing offers on the Honda Accord, which has a 5-star overall vehicle score. The Honda Accord is also the best-selling car in its class. Race in to the Honda Perfect Accord sales event and get a great deal on the Accord today at your Honda dealer.
Look out, burgers and fries. A new power couple is here. Bacon cheddar burger and pizza. Introducing Papa John's Bacon Cheddar Burger Pizza with dill pickles, hickory smoked bacon, and zesty burger sauce. Try one on pan or large crust for just $10.
Papa John's.
And we are in the midst of our roundtable, pretty rockin' roundtable today. Before we move on to another topic, I want to say that on Friday I tried to interview Kathy Rundle, the state attorney in Miami-Dade, about the resolution passed that rebuked her. She wasn't available, but she did send me a statement. I want to put it up on the screen so people at home can see this, and you too. She said, "I do not believe that the voice vote accurately reflects the opinion of the party as a whole or of the people I serve. Some do not accept the medical examiner's findings in the Darren Rainey case, concluding that his death was accidental and there were no burns on his body. This forensic pathologist's findings make my case unprosecutable." Well, that's her defense. I think...
well, legally, she appears to be doing her job correctly. I mean, legally, she can only prosecute the evidence that's presented to her. Now, politically, it might be a death knell.
Right.
And the other thing is the Miami New Times had done a pretty good job about this, is they found many cases where Rundle's office prosecuted people who weren't police under the thinnest of grounds, where it was not a prosecutable case where they had to drop it. So by Rundle's own past actions, this action is inconsistent. Remember what I said before about how she's hallucinating if she thinks she's going to become governor? You know, you look at the first half of that statement where she doesn't think this reflects the sentiments of Democrats generally. I mean, I haven't polled this, but from what I understand of the Black Lives Matter movement, I do not see how she would be able to survive a primary.
And let's remember our in-depth story in the Herald last week in which she almost doubled the number of, was it not convictions, but prosecutions of police officers.
She said 300 or so.
And we had to come back, and it was lowered to like 170 something.
Let's just rephrase it. Kathy Rundle said something that was patently false, and the Miami Herald caught her. And I think that's the important thing here.
All right, if we can, I do want to bring up this subject of street names in Hollywood, of Confederate generals and the little, it's not a little, in fact, it's a really intense debate that's been going on there, whether Generals Hood, Lee, and Nathan Bedford Forrest, for God's sake, whether those names, well, he was the founder of the Ku Klux Klan.
Got it.
I know you know, and you've editorialized on this, and here are the names of these generals, and here is a demonstration outside Hollywood City Hall the other day. Ed, what's your feeling about having the names of these Confederate generals up on street signs?
Look, I don't think you can wipe out history. It is what it is. But on street signs, let the city take them down. Let the city take them down. Let's put it in an appropriate historic perspective.
Museum.
In a museum, in a conversation, in understanding of the context of that time. I mean, there's no excusing some of it, but it is part of our history that we should never forget. But on the street signs, take them down.
Absolutely. These are the names of people who apparently do not represent what this nation stands for.
Right.
And yes, put them in a museum. Don't wipe out history. They're part of history, a big part of history that continues to play out today as the protests and counter-protests in Hollywood show.
I would recommend anybody who's really interested in this topic, go to YouTube and look up New Orleans Mayor Mitch Landrieu gave a speech about, 3 weeks ago, when they took down 4 Confederate statues. And he said, this is not the history that we want to celebrate. We'll acknowledge it. We're not saying history didn't exist. I mean, they existed, these men.
Let's talk about history for a second. Hood, Lee and Forrest never came to Hollywood, Florida, because it didn't exist. So their names, there is no connection.
There's no connection, right?
In fact, they never even went to Florida. Florida was such a backwater that the Union didn't really try to occupy Tallahassee. And then when you look at the history of these street signs, when Hollywood was built in 1925 and platted, it didn't have these names. They were changed later to that.
Right.
And in an insult to injury for the black people who live in Hollywood, in the black neighborhood, Nathan Bedford Forrest, a founder of the KKK, has this road named after him that leads right into their community, and their community is called Liberia. I mean, come on.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, and look, we should be guided by some of the things that Jeb Bush did. One of the first things he did when he became governor long ago was take down the Confederate flag and put it in its appropriate historical place, but not on top of
the state capital. Yeah, no, good for Jeb. He did also, if I may say, Jeb, when it came to appointing minorities, women to the bench, he was probably the best governor we've had in quite a while.
I think that's probably true.
All right, Nancy Ankrum, always great to see you.
Wonderful.
Thanks for coming in. Dan Pizzoli, Trip Scott, go man.
Thank you.
Party of Lincoln. Doesn't like the Confederate names, I don't blame
All right, Mark Caputo, always great to have you
Thank
come
you.
in. All right, still to come, my personal perspective, yes, about this debate in Hollywood over those streets named for the Confederate generals. Guess what, again?
Thousands of Accords are on sale now for just $179 a month only at your official Honda dealer.
South Florida Honda has it.
Accord, the #1 selling vehicle for the past 40 years, a car and driver 10 best or record 31 times for less than the competition. $179 a month. Truckloads of Accords on sale for $179 a month, or save thousands with 0.9%. Don't miss the Accord sales event this week at your local Honda dealer.
South Florida Honda has it.
So how are you, Coach? I heard you were in the hospital.
Well, Dad, I woke up short of breath the other day and had to go to ER. But don't worry, I'm doing great now.
You look great. You gave us a scare.
I was scared too, but I trust ER professionals at HCA East Florida.
Well, you do always tell me they're the best in the business.
You're a quick learner.
To find out about HCA East Florida's hospital services and the best and fastest emergency care, visit HCAEastFlorida.com.
The compact Lincoln MKC, with a healthy sense of exhilaration. A cabin that's a sanctuary. And a lane-keeping system that helps keep you on track, giving you a new perspective. The Lincoln MKC. For a limited time, lease an MKC for $269 a month, only at your Lincoln dealer.
It's not just a sofa, it's a lifestyle. City Furniture presents Custom Style Sectionals by Kevin Charles. A full line of modular sectionals built just for you. Choose your pieces, your pillows, and your fabric. And if you order it today, you can have it tonight. Custom Style Sectionals by Kevin Charles. Made in America for City Furniture.
Whether you spend summer on the beach or out on the town, spend it in a new Vista BMW and spend less. Now during our summertime sales event at Vista BMW, drive a 2017 X3 S-Drive 28i for just $349 a month, a 2017 BMW 530i sedan, only $469 a month, or buy a new BMW now with 0 down or 0% up to 72 months. Certified BMWs available with 0.9% financing during our summertime sales event, now at Vista BMW, Coconut Creek or Pompano Beach.
And here is a live look now from our Miami Tower Cam, a beautiful summer day. But here is Weather Authority meteorologist Jennifer Correa with your professional Sunday forecast.
Hey there, South Florida. Good afternoon. It's a beautiful view out of Mount Sinai Medical Center Tower Cam. Those temperatures quickly warming up to the upper 80s already early this afternoon. And already it feels so hot out there. In Homestead, it feels like the triple digits elsewhere. Not too far from that, in the 90s, upper 90s in Kendall. So remember, drink plenty of water because that heat index is going to be high for the rest of our afternoon. And by the way, the rest of the afternoon, just a mix of sunshine and clouds. Rain chance is low at 10% for the rest of today. It does go up, though, tomorrow.
Jennifer, all right, thank you. Before we leave you this morning, a personal perspective about streets in the city of Hollywood, named for those Confederate generals. The streets are Hood, Lee, and Forrest, as in Generals Robert E. Lee, John B. Hood, and Nathan Bedford Forrest. He was the founder of the Ku Klux Klan, also served as the Grand Wizard, that is the big poobah of bigotry. They all fought for the Confederacy, which of course wanted to be a separate country where slavery would be legal. So having their names on these street signs in Hollywood insults a lot of people who live in the city, particularly African Americans. Several Hollywood residents have asked the city to take down the street signs, which they find offensive. A group on the other side, Sons of Confederate Veterans, says the signs honor part of American history and should stay up. Well, I say the signs symbolize values and beliefs that we reject as Americans, and the city should take them down. It makes no sense the city of Hollywood would tacitly honor people who helped lead the fight against our union and for secession so that slavery would be legal. That is an abhorrent idea, and one that this country went to war over. It's fine to commemorate those who fought in the Civil War in history books and in museums, and sure, put up a plaque for them at the battlefield sites, but street signs, no way. Especially not in African American neighborhoods, and some of these streets do run through black neighborhoods in Hollywood. In one news report I heard, a spokesman for the Sons of the Confederate Veterans said they tolerate having a street named for Martin Luther King, so what's the big deal about a street named for Lee or Hood or Forrest? Well, that sets up a false equivalency. Dr. King was a civil rights leader who sought change through nonviolence. Those generals went to war to maintain slavery. There is no comparison and no moral equivalency. It will be up to the Hollywood Mayor and Commission to decide what to do. I respectfully urge them, rename those streets, take down those signs. That's my perspective. Hope you have a wonderful Sunday. Remember, as always, stay informed, get involved, and we will see you next week.